Okay, I know I said yesterday I would code before 12. There goes me lying. I don't know what it is. I just my brain refuses to focus before. I don't know. I'm gonna try to get better at telling my brain to code in the mornings and then actually doing it. So we left off implementing this side collides enemy function with our vulture. We didn't fill in any of the logic, but we've got the conditions. So the tricky thing is we don't have the explode into egg sprites just yet. But it looks like it's the same explosion sprites, but repurposed. It might just be the first two, or it might be just this middle one, and then it turns into an egg. I'm not exactly sure. I'm gonna check what it looks like when I collide with a enemy and see if it explodes with 1, 2, or all 3 of our explosion sprites. Okay, guys, come on. God. It looks like... Was it just the third frame? Did it look like? Here, let's get this guy. Gosh, it's hard to see. It looks like it's just either the second and the third frame into the egg. Look at that hopping. I can't believe that hopping is in the game. I definitely don't have that. Oh, the pterodactyl's on its way. Oh no. Oh, I knew. Okay. So let's look. Yeah, it actually looked like it had at least 2 frames. So, but it didn't quite look like when I explode. So it might be just frame 2 and 3. Gosh, it's hard to tell. I think I like it just being frame 2 and 3. Because it does, for whatever reason, seem faster to turn into an egg than to finish the explosion when I die. So it's hard to say. Maybe one of these days I'll screen capture it and step frame by frame. I can't really do that at the moment because I am screen recording, so I might just do that once I stop recording, and double check and see if I'm right or if I figure something else out. So yeah, we're checking the X position, and this is if they're at the same height. If they're at the same height and they're facing both directions, we're going to turn the vulture into an egg. So we need to give not only our ostrich class another boolean called exploded, setting it to false, but we need to give our vulture the same boolean to be initialized to false, and then we need to basically say basically in our update logic, I want to say we need to indent like all this shit and say, if not self-exploding, do this whole block and then do another block at the bottom. That means if it's exploded, we keep our same X and we just trigger. For the vulture, it's going to be different than the ostrich because I guess let's focus on the ostrich first. So we're going to say, because if we put it in the update function, we say if not exploded, do all our current logic. Then we say otherwise, which means if we are exploded. For our main ostrich, it means we don't update our X position anymore. We just render our appropriate explosion frames, and then we have to reinitialize character at a new starting point, which will then overwrite the X position of our exploded stationary object at that point. But it's a little different for the vulture because we need to draw our pixels of exploding at the last X position where it was collided upon, and then we need to change the render and the size of our object into an egg. So then I guess it gets into another issue, or either in our vulture class we can have if exploded turn our X and turn our width and our height into an egg width and a height so that we can detect collision on just the egg. Because we need to detect collision on just the egg because our player character needs to be able to interact with it and collide with it to get points. But I guess the question is, should we do it that way, or should we have a whole separate egg class that gets instantiated whenever an exploded is true? Part of me feels like we should have a separated egg class because we need to give the egg a couple different things. Well, no, yeah. I guess it depends how the original is implemented. Like if we kill a bounder, which is the red one, if we kill a bounder, I think that's what it was, Bounder, Hunter, and Shadow Lord, right? If we kill a bounder, which is a red one, does it hatch into a pilot, into a red pilot or a white pilot? So like under what scenario does each of these pilots emerge? We'll have to do that. We'll have to figure that out. Gosh, it's tricky. There's a lot to do. There's a lot to do. I guess instead of being overwhelmed thinking about all that stuff, right now I'm just going to focus on when the ostrich is lower than the X position of vulture, then we need to stop updating our player's X position and Y position, and then we need to render those frames. So let's just focus on that for now. We can get into the details of what pilot is what when what egg is burst and then not captured later. It's just too much for me to think about right now, and then I'll just freeze and not make any progress. So instead of doing explode vulture into egg, instead of doing that, we're only going to worry about vulture joust is higher, which means our player explodes. So what needs to happen here is if our X is smaller than the vulture's X, actually no, this is not right. If our X is smaller than the vulture's X, oh no, yeah, this is right, because we're in the else condition here. So yeah, if our X is smaller than the vulture's X, that means our player joust is higher. That means we explode the vulture into an egg. Otherwise, we would, since we have the equality up here condition, this else would only trigger if our x is bigger than the Vulture 1x and the collision is true, because this will only execute if this is true, and then that would mean our player explodes, which would look something like this. It would be self.exploded gets triggered to true, but then that doesn't actually do anything just yet, because we need to say under all our update logic, I think we need to indent all this and say if not exploded, do all this, and then it'll be not exploded, and then once exploded gets triggered to true with that instance there, then we have a separate condition of else that says self x is equal to self x instead of, and y is equal to self y instead of updating by dy. So actually we don't need to say, it's redundant to just say self.x gets its current x position, because the only thing that's changing the y position is modifying it by dy, and this will be in the not exploded loop, or not exploded logic bit. So it's just a little scary to me to try to indent all of this shit. It's almost like there's a better way to do it, and it's called because we don't want any of this code to do anything if we're exploded. So we do need to say, like, hey, if exploded, do a certain thing, which is not update our x or y with our velocity on either direction. We just need to do nothing with it. We need to keep it the same, and then we need to trigger the render. And actually, I'm trying to think if there's a better way of doing this. Like I want to say, instead of trying to do the exploded in all of the update, we just trigger exploded to be true in the update function, but we don't change anything. Like, as far as the game's concerned, well, shoot, no, we can't do that. We have to sort of despawn our character, because our character still has logic being applied to it, like the collision and everything. So if we don't sort of freeze its x position, so what I was thinking was, all we have to do is just say, if we're exploded, then render the appropriate thing, and don't even worry about the logic of our ostrich character. But we need to worry about it, because if we're not rendering it, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist according to the game, because the object is still a thing according to the game, whether or not we render it or not. And since we do a bunch of different things with collision, if we collide and then die, and then our invisible body would be collided with another ostrich or something, that would give us unwanted results. This is getting tricky, man. It's getting real tricky. Oh, my brain can hardly hold on to what's going on. So I want to say there's an easier way of doing this than to indent everything. Absolutely everything. There's got to be a better way, right? Because either we say if not exploded and put all of this logic in not exploded, or we say if exploded do something, otherwise then paste all this. But I'm just worried that the indentation and everything won't work. But I guess let's just try it. Because I'm worried if I highlight all of what's in our update function and then hit tab, it won't quite indent everything properly, but maybe it will. This is already past it, I think. Yeah. Here. So if I hit tab, does it indent everything? It looks like it. So we can say if self dot exploded, if not self exploded, then do all of this logic to the bottom, which oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. See, I feel like this end is... Hold on. So it looks like the first line... Oh, gotcha. That first line is the closing end of our function update, which is hard to see, but that is the case. So we need to indent everything but that one. And then we need to put another end in there, but same idea goes. So we're going to say if not self.exploded, then do all this code. Then we need the end of that. And then we can say otherwise and just to be verbose, we don't need this, but just to be verbose, it helps me. Else if self.exploded, then we need to do... See, and the tricky thing is, maybe we don't need anything because we're not trying to do, like, actually what we need to do is to deinstantiate it. So maybe I actually don't know how to do this. So the idea here is we need to remove our ostrich as an object from our game at this point. But we need to still be able to render an explosion at our X's location. So we still need to keep track of our X's location until we render those sprites. And as far as deinstantiation goes, the only way I know how to do it is a table.remove and then feed it a table, but we're not populating a table with all of our ostrich instances. So it's almost like we're gonna need a flag called, Okay, so the idea is we need to keep, we can't just delete our player ostrich because we need the X and the Y to be existing so that we can render the explosion. But we don't want our character to be able to be collided upon in this state. But we're not doing any of the collision in this state. We're only doing it if not self-exploded. So I think we're covered there. But then the question is, do we need any logic here? I think we just need to say, because our update to our X and our Y position is only happening if not self-exploded. So as soon as self-exploded is true, none of that code is going to be running. So I think we don't need any logic there, because we're only doing logic if we're not exploded. And then that allows us to be able to still render not an ostrich sprite, but an explosion 1, 2, and then 3 sprite at our current X. And then once we're done rendering that explosion, then we do something where we say our ostrich off screen becomes true. You know, we give ourselves a boolean called off screen or dead or something, and then we say if ostrich is dead and we still have more lives, then deduct one of our lives and instantiate a new ostrich class at a random spawn point or whatever we end up deciding to do. So I think just all of that logic inside this one not self-exploded covers us. But we need to now say if, you know, we need to say render all this stuff only if player.one's not exploded, right? If not self. And it's not player one. I mean, so the thing is, this is player one instead of self, but we should probably have it self. Self dot exploded, then so if we're not exploded, do our ostrich sprite. However, we need else, meaning we are exploded, but I'm going to be verbose about it. Else if self dot exploded, then render explosion sprites. Now, it's not quite, we need to figure out how many frames the explosion sprite's on for. So I think we need to do I think we need to give ourselves an explosion timer, set it equal to 0, and then if we are exploded, this is where we would need this. If we are exploded, we would say else if self dot exploded, then we're gonna take our explosion timer, we're gonna set it equal to our current number of the timer shifted by delta time. So that will give us a time elapsed in seconds since we've exploded in our update function. And then we will say we need to pick how many frames, which it looks like the whole thing ends in less than a second, so it should be less than 20 frames. So maybe we try 10 frames first, and then if that's too fast, we go to 20. So we're going to say if self.exploded, then if explosion timer is less than 10, then render explosion sprites. We say if self.explosion timer is less than 10, so and you know what, I wanted to do 10 frames, but this is actually time in seconds. So 10 frames would be a sixth of a second, which a sixth of a second would be what, 0.2? No, 0.3? Why am I 1 second divided by 6 is 0.166 repeating, so we'll do 0.2. A fifth of a frame. Fifth of a second, rather. A fifth of a second in 60 frames per second. So if self-explosion, this would be render explosion sprite 1. And then we need to say else if self-explosion timer is smaller than 0.4. And the thing is, this will work because even though, let's say, 3.3 seconds has elapsed, it's going to ask, it's going to know it's exploded, then it's 0.3, so it wouldn't execute this line because it's not smaller than 0.2. So since the nested order goes, if it's smaller than 0.2, render sprite 1, if it's smaller than 0.4, but this can only execute if it was not smaller than 0.2. So once it gets bigger than 0.2, then it'll say, okay, well, is it smaller than 0.4? If so, render sprite 2, explosion sprite 2, and then else if self.explosion timer is smaller than the 0.6, and they're just each a fifth of a second. Yeah. Render explosion sprite 3. And then otherwise render nothing. But it would render nothing by its natural. It would render nothing because none of these would be true. It would be explosion timer would be greater than 0.6, therefore it wouldn't execute any of this because we are actually exploded, and then it wouldn't render any of this because our explosion timer is greater than 0.6. So we don't need to do anything else there, I think. But we do need to say, we do need to look at our explosion sprites. We're explosion 1, 2, and 3, so that's easy enough. And we're not updating our X or Y position once we're exploded, so it should be stationary. So then we should be able to say love.graphics.draw, and it takes in there's two ways of doing it. If you pass in enough arguments, basically we're just doing the simple version, which is it takes in a drawable, and then it takes in an X and a Y, which we're going to give its current X and Y. I think that's all we need, because we shouldn't need these other bonus parameters because we're not using a texture, or we're not using a quad, because this is the texture and then the quad and then the X, Y, then the rotation, then the X scale, Y scale. And I don't know why we have this. I feel like we can get rid of that, but maybe not. You know, like it's probably there for a reason, but I'm not exactly sure. I think this is the bare bones of it. It can just take 3 arguments, a drawable and an X and Y at the minimum, I think. So we'll see. So this should have the result of drawing explosion 1 at its frozen X and Y position for a fifth of a frame, and then for the next fifth of a frame it should render explosion 2, then for the next fifth of a frame it should render explosion 3, and then it should render nothing. And exploded can only become true if, let's find it, self.exploded. It can only become true if, right there, if a collision's detected and our player's X and our vulture X is not the same, and that our player's X is not smaller than our vulture's X. That's the only time exploded will become true. I'm not exactly sure this will compile. We need an end at ostrich 189, which is right here. We have, yeah, what's going on here? We need an end right here. No, because we've got an else. Yeah, shoot, what the heck's going on here? If our vulture, gosh, if our X's are equal, then if we're facing the same direction, we're going to do something. If we're facing the same direction, we're going to do something. It's hard to see, because this is the end for this one. This is the end for this one. This is the end for this one. So what are we missing to close if at line 177? 177. This is the end that closes that one. I'm not exactly sure. So it looks like that space between the LSIP. So we're looking to see if we explode. We did not. So it looks like we're, let me print. So that could mean many different things. I'm gonna print some debugging here. So, you know, I'm trying to print this. We're trying to print enemy collides with player. So enemy collide, and then we're going to convert to a string. The result of our not self, but our player one with a side collides enemy with a vulture 1 as a argument at 10 pixels to the left, 10 pixels to the right of the screen, and 10 pixels down. So this should say false when we start it. And then as soon as this ostrich runs through us, it should be true. And if it isn't, we know that since it isn't, it means we've implemented our side collides enemy function incorrectly. So let's take a look at our side collides enemy function. So this enemy parameter is a object that requires to have an X field, a Y field, a width and a height field, and then we're checking if our left side of the ostrich is smaller than the right side of our enemy. The left side of our ostrich is smaller than the right side of our enemy, and the left side of our ostrich is greater than the left side of our enemy. So that's colliding on the X. And then if the top of our ostrich, oh, here we go. Wait, no, yeah, top of our ostrich is smaller than the bottom of our ostrich, yep, and the top of our ostrich is greater than the top. Huh. We're checking to see if the top of our ostrich is smaller than the bottom of our enemy, and the bottom of our ostrich is greater than the top. So this needs self.height. Let's see if that fixes it. So we're hoping this enemy collide will turn true as soon as this vulture runs into us. Oh! You guys. Didn't that look great? Didn't that look great? It was a little slow. So all we have to do, we're going to change this to 1/10 of a second, which means this is now a 0.2 and this is a 0.3, so it should be a twice as fast animation. And now we're going to wait, and let's give us some DX so we see. Dude, that looked great. Didn't that look great? We need to reset our R button. Didn't that look great? I can't believe that worked. Where is it that we press R to reset stuff? Here. So we also need to reset our player one dot exploded to become false, because we're not reinstantiating the object upon this, which actually we should, because that it would stop all of this. What I'm going to do is just comment this stuff out. I'm still going to stop the sounds. So it looked like we had a DX, and then when we exploded, we just exploded and our sprite didn't move, which was the intended function. Like, we didn't want our sprite to move. We wanted our X and Y position to stop updating and just render the sprite. So instead of all of this junk, what I'm actually going to do is go to where we instantiate our player, and hitting R will actually just reinstantiate our player, which will initialize this to false, initialize this to true, or whatever this, like, so we don't have to do any of those lines. We just say, hey, give us another ostrich at the same exact location of our first one. And let's try it again. So I want to try a little faster this time. So the thing is, that's great. So this should only happen, look, if our ostrich is higher in the collision, we shouldn't explode. But we do. Because in that case, we should turn the vulture into an egg. So something's going wrong with the X check, or no, the Y check. Maybe that's why. I don't know why I've been switching those up lately, but we need to check our Y position in order to determine the logic for explosion. So wherever our self explodes gets true. See, look, we're checking our X position, which we need to be checking our Y position. Yeah, Y position, not X position here. And then we'll see if our Y's are the same, we shouldn't trigger an exploded, and we should still exist. Okay, we trigger some weird shit, but now if I'm high up above, it didn't trigger anything, which is correct. And then if it happens to jump, wow, okay, whatever. If it happens to jump, okay, you know what, we gotta figure out, we gotta do some other stuff to make sure it doesn't mess up like that. See, I messed up saying X position there, it threw me off. If our Y's are equal, we need to explode vulture into egg. Moves vulture X to be not colliding. So if our, okay, so we move our X. Yeah, I'm gonna turn this off for now. We do have that it swaps both of our DXs if our Ys are the same and we collide. So if, okay, let me see what that looks like. So if we're the same, oh shoot, see, that should have triggered an explosion there. Well, see, why did that trigger an explosion? Because the explosion should trigger... That's weird. That's the one time it shouldn't trigger the explosion. I'm going to be verbose about this and say if our self.y is smaller than... No. Okay, hold on. Let me think about this. If our self.y is smaller than the vulture, yeah, player joust is higher. Whereas if our self.y is bigger, which is lower, our self.y is lower than our vulture 1 y, that's when we trigger the explosion. So let's try to get exploded here. Nice. And then jump. Oh, see, that should have triggered it. Oh, actually, maybe not. Maybe if we change our vulture's flap amount or jump height, where do we switch our vulture's dy here? We have this gravity negate. No, that's different. Gravity bouncing off top. Where do we have that? I mean, I guess grounded get false. We're applying gravity. I'm not exactly sure where we're putting here. Jump counter. We need to spend an episode writing some notes. I'm trying to determine where we set our jumping height for our vulture, because we have... Is there a self-dot jumping? Oh, look. Wait. Why are we setting our dx? Oh no, we're just giving ourselves a -1 dx as a speed. But then where are we doing our dy? Flapped is true. So it might be under flapped getting true. And there's a better word for flapped gets true. But then flapped is true. If flapped... Okay, so I think if we switch this number, it might make us jump longer, because I think flapped is determined, like if flapped is false, no, it doesn't look like it jumps us much higher. I think we only apply gravity if flapped is false. Is that right? Where do we apply gravity? Apply gravity. Okay, so then what the heck is flapped doing, man? Why do we have flapped? We're setting flapped to be true, yet we aren't using it anywhere. No, we're here. If we're flapped, we're setting the viewport to the flapped. Okay, so flapped is just the trigger for when the wings are down. So, but then how are we choosing how high to jump? That's one thing I'm confused about here. It has something to do with jump timer, I guess. So if we're flapped, we're incrementing our jump timer, and then if our jump timer is greater than a 0.1, we're no longer flapped. So flapped has the effect of how long the ostrich's wings are downwards upon a jump, but I'm not seeing where we negate our dy, or where we change our dy to be a negative number that should send us upwards. I'm not seeing that. I see that if we're not grounded, okay, so maybe it's under grounded then. If we're not grounded, what is our dy? We're not grounded. We're multiplied by gravity. But if we are grounded, if self.jumping, our grounded is false. But where are we setting our dy? I'm not exactly sure. Oh, look. No, never mind. Jumping gets true. Jumping. If we're jumping, we're not grounded. Okay. Oh, God. I'm a little lost here, to be honest. I'm not exactly sure how our ostrich AI is jumping. Let's see any instance of our self Y being updated. We update it if we're spawning. We update it if we bottom collide with a ground platform. We update it if we collide with a top platform. We update it to get dy. So if we're not grounded, then we're not. Gosh, it's so hard to envision this. If we are not grounded, meaning we just jumped. No, it could mean we also walk off a platform, because this is the check grounded. Yeah. Oh God. Okay. If we're not grounded, we apply gravity. Then we update our Y position with our dy. We bounce off the top. We give our dy something else. I'm really confused where our jumping comes in, man. I think it's not officially jumping. I think what's really happening is we're not actually jumping, is the thing. What we are doing is we're flapping, which changes our grounded position to become false. But when our grounded position is false, like let's say this is the vulture on the ground, when we turn flapping to true, which is in a random interval based on the jump timer, it turns our grounded to false, which turns our vulture's height into 16 instead of 24, which turns our flapped sprite to trigger, but it does not actually change our Y position, meaning we're not technically jumping. We're flapping, but our Y position's staying the same. And I think that's why we're not triggering a player explosion when we walk by, or we're not triggering a player explosion when the vulture's running towards our player and it flaps. Since it's not jumping, its Y is detecting an equal collision, which will just reverse their dx. So to prove this, I'm going to print out our enemy's y, and we're going to watch it when it jumps and confirm that our y is in fact not changing, because I'm pretty sure it's not. That's why I can't find where we're jumping, because we're actually not jumping. We're actually becoming not grounded, and when we're not grounded, we apply gravity to our y position, which is a shorter height. So that's why we do fall, but that doesn't mean we jumped. So it's just kind of a tricky situation there, but I think that's cool. If this turns out to be right. So like, I'm trying to print out our enemy y, which means we're going to convert to a string our vulture1 dot y position, and this is called, this dot notation is called a field, so the y field in our vulture1 object, or in C programming it's called a what is it called in C? They're called not a field, but shoot, a method? No, I think that's Python. Shoot, I know this. Hold on. I'm gonna look it up because it's gonna drive me crazy. C coding dot notation is what? Yeah, what are they called? It's gonna drive me crazy. Sorry guys, I want to figure that out. Gosh. It's called a method. Shoot, that's gonna drive me crazy. Union member, that's what it's called, a member. Yeah, not a method, a member. So yeah, this would be called a field in Lua, I guess, but a member if it was in C or something. And then we're gonna print out 10 pixels lower our vulture1.y, and we're gonna confirm that when our vulture is flapping, our enemy's y isn't in fact changing. It is changing. It's getting higher though, because it's getting, okay, so this still confirms it, because as soon as we're flapped, we apply gravity because we're no longer grounded. If we were in fact jumping, our y would be smaller than 180 instead of bigger than 180. And then as soon as we detect a bottom collision, we change our height and reset our y position back to 180. So yeah, this confirms we're not actually jumping. Even though our jumping boolean might be getting turned to true. Let me see. Yep, our jumping will get triggered to true, but that doesn't mean we're actually jumping. Jumping just triggers, sets jump counter, and jump counter sets how long until we are no longer grounded, but that doesn't mean we're jumping. So we'll need to change that. Jump counter is smaller than 0. Yeah, so here we're subtracting delta time, so we're saying give us a random jump counter, subtract delta time, and then as soon as jump counter surpasses 0, then we're going to be jumping as true, but we're not actually jumping, so we need to change that. I mean, we could change it where we say, like, where is our jumping? Look. So maybe we say, to make this self-jumping actually jumping, we say our self-dy gets a negative, let's just put 3. I think that's way too high. It should be a super jump. That gets negated by gravity, but I just want to see if that's the case. If we add it right there. it should jump higher. Yeah. Yeah. Let me see. We're gonna have to play around with that. But yeah, we weren't technically jumping, which is an interesting problem. That's sick, man. That's sick, dude. That's so sick. I love that. That makes me happy to look at. But we're also not flapping, which is a whole nother problem. Yeah, see, we should, every time we jump, we should set flapping. Okay. Let me write some stuff down. We did do this. We need to do set flapping right upon vulture jumping. And then we also need to flap multiple times per jump for a vulture. Because in the game, they kind of go like, they kind of flap like crazy, but their jumps are not so effective. But since we don't have the flap multiple times, I kind of have to do our DY a bigger number like this. Just for now, just to make sure he's actually jumping, because we were getting that not jumping problem. But this, yeah, if it jumps just right, it should kill us. Because, yep, okay, it does. Perfect. As long, you know, as long as we collide, yeah. Perfect. So yeah, that's looking right. But the flap logic and the jump logic isn't right for that yet. Then we'll need to fix our y being equal to change our dx, and all that good stuff. But for now, I think that's a big success. We got our true collision function implemented correctly. We figured out that weird jumping problem. We got our ostrich exploding sprite looking really good. I'm really happy with that. And we've got a you know, a list of things to fix for the vulture. But I mean, it's so cool. We got, you know, basic AI, the animation's working, and we're getting the death collision working. We do need, you know, eventually we're gonna be adding the egg. If we collide, seeing that we shouldn't have exploded when our vulture was higher. But I'm not exactly, can't really recreate that. Yeah, see, like that shouldn't have killed us. See, that shouldn't have killed us. So we're gonna have to figure that out. But yeah, we're gonna have to figure that out. But at least we got the bare bones of it working. Yeah, see, we shouldn't have died there. But, you know, we're still working out the kinks, and we got to play. It's tricky because there's so many things to implement. We've got to implement the vulture turning into an egg, us disappearing, and then if we're the same, we need to swap our dx. And then if we're facing the same direction, we need a collision to result in the vulture turning into an egg as well. But I'm gonna call that a day, because it's gonna be, you know, it's like we're kind of at a stopping point here. We've got the animation working. We know we need to work out some other stuff. It's just gonna be a bugger to implement. So I'm going to call it while we have a working prototype, and we're going to add everything to the staging area and commit with a message saying we added player collision death animation. Yep. Get P, push to our origin main branch. And just for looking, I want to see our GitHub, because I like seeing the dots of all our commits. So yeah, we missed the 20th. That was the day of my movie screening. I was busy all day. And then the 25th is what, today? No, tomorrow. Okay, so yeah, it would make sense. Look at that, look at that. You know, in almost 3 weeks, we only missed one day on my movie premiere, which I was busy all day, so I'm giving myself a break on that one. And all of these a lot of these should be green. We just weren't signed in. So, whatever. We've signed in now, so we're gonna try to keep this green streak going. But you guys, it's coming together, man. It looks like Joust, you know? Like, it's undeniably Joust right now. If you've played Joust. That's really cool, man. It's really cool. Yeah, I mean, clearly we need to fix stuff, but it's looking great. I'm really happy with that. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And then soon we're going to be doing that game jam for the One Lone Coder YouTube channel, because I did a game jam of his 2 years ago, and I want to do it again. So yeah, we're going to be taking a little break from Joust in a couple days and doing that game jam, which I think will be really fun for this channel and give us a little break from Joust. So I'm hoping we'll be able to implement some new ideas completely and be a little more creative, because with this Joust, even though we have to be creative in terms of solving these problems, we're trying to recreate something. So it's not really like we get to choose what we're going to create. We just get to choose how we implement what we're creating. So a different type of creativity, but I'm looking forward to it. And then we'll have another, you know, random project under our belt, and we can start. I can show you guys the process of making a game from the ground up, because you guys missed the first like 6 months of me programming Joust. Even though the 6 months of programming was like 12 commits or whatever, but you missed all the beginning stages. Anyways, thanks for watching. Today was a great day. Glad we got the explosion working, and it seems like I'm able to talk through these things and not get so caught up on some stuff. Like, it feels like I'm knowing what I'm doing more often these days, which feels really good. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'll stop recording now.